Yo, ¿cómo están? It's Wild on Twos and the Mooch. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing good, thanks.
Always great talking to you. I know we always talk more than we should probably beforehand, because then, I mean, that's why I like keep the ideas going. But this week's topic is something that I know that you get a lot of questions on or hear about. I always get in the comment section a question. That question is, what is a one percenter? What makes a one percenter? So if you want to kick that off, we can. But I mean, I hear that all the time, and because you see all these clubs everywhere, and people are like, "But what makes a one percenter a 1% club if they're not gang, if they're not, doing the illegal things that they say they're doing?"
Right. Yeah. I get hit up about it probably, well, super often, right? And it's kind of a difficult conversation. I think that there's that traditional meaning of one percenter, which we can go over. A lot of people, read it in the newspaper and heard the story and the history. But I think that that term and just kind of what it is has evolved quite a bit with the way motorcycle clubs have evolved over the years. So I think it's really going to depend on kind of how we look at it and in what context we put it in, because I don't think it's that cut and dry anymore.
Oh yeah, I mean, you see everything about from the AMA back in the day, who coined it, who was the first one to wear the diamond, who invented the diamond. There's always arguments and discussions about that, and then what transpired as the original outlaws to what we see today. Like you said, back then, I think there were just guys that they say weren't really following the rules of the AMA, and that's why the people that they're trying to tell the citizens that it's 99% of the bikers in the AMA follow the rules or law-abiding citizens, but there's 1% only that party too much, don't obey the rules, and ride hard, and don't care about people's safety. I think that's like the gist of the beginning, what
Right.
people kind of normally hear.
Yeah, well, with the Boost Fighters and Po Bob and those clubs from that initial Hollister incident, what we've always been told is that the AMA released that statement after Hollister, and the clubs that embrace that were like, yeah, we're those 1%. We're the 1% that aren't members of the AMA, and we just kind of show up and we don't follow the rules and we do our own thing. So I think that's the traditional meaning of it. And that makes a lot of sense for that time period, right? When clubs were actually in the AMA, showing up and doing races and sanctioned, quote unquote
The
sanctioned events.
sanctioned events, yeah.
And
But then,
then they were
yeah, then
having outlaw races at the beach. So they started, because they were separate from the AMA. They started doing their own races. Daytona and stuff like that kicked off, and that was the unsanctioned stuff. So that initial 1% makes sense to me. When we start doing it in terms of motorcycle clubs and who's wearing the diamond and who wore the patch, that's when things get a little muddied.
well, then you get the part about like these new 1% clubs that are popping up that no one has ever heard of, and then people calling them pop up clubs and all these other things. But the original 1%, percent guys that we want to talk about the AMA was doing the same thing that clubs do now, to a point that causes other clubs to try to become 1% in clubs. And that's controlling the territory, controlling what they wear, controlling how they wear their patch, what they do, the sanctioned events. Listen to us, and that 1% of people didn't want to listen and follow those rules, because they wanted to just be what they want to do, ride their bicycles the way they want to ride, be with their friends. And I don't know if that's what some of these pop-ups are doing, because they're tired of some clubs like telling them what to do. But like you said, a lot of the times nowadays, I think a 1%, someone that wears a 1% diamond is trying to show the dominance in the area, if
Right.
compared to the years before.
I think you draw a pretty good parallel of the AMA and probably COCs, essentially, right? Like,
Yeah,
if you're
correct.
wanting to
Yeah.
kick off a club in an area, traditionally you're going to go talk to the COC and get the blessing. And a lot of these clubs you're talking about, like pop-up clubs, or there was a pretty big explosion of like clubs from other countries where people were trying to start them here instead of joining locals, because they weren't going through that process. They didn't want to go through the CNC, the COC. They didn't want to ask the dominant clubs in the area permission. And so a lot of these clubs were popping up, and when they popped up, they were popping up with the diamond, because a lot of people are playing a role, right, or playing a part. And it's kind of what we were talking about beforehand. And I think a lot of people want to wear that patch because it thinks makes them something they're not. Um, to me, I think the simplest version or simplest example in this day and age is being a one percenter is being a member of one of the 1% motorcycle clubs. And when I say that, I mean one of the dominant clubs, one of the top 5 or 6 clubs in the country. To me, that was what would make you a one percenter. I know, people probably have different views on that or different opinions, but in reality, there's, a few major clubs in this entire country that, oversee a lot of the areas. And like you said, have I don't want to use the word control, but they have control. They oversee the areas and have a big voice and are strongly heard in those areas.
Yeah, I mean, and I can see that. I mean, mine, I probably extend the list just due to historical history of clubs. Like you have from the Chinglings to old clubs that have a lot of history to it, which wear diamonds, but it's probably not. They have more respect in general, I think, for history compared to like the top 5 clubs that or 6 that you're talking about. And there's some other diamond clubs that have been around in small towns that they don't care about growing, but they're just more of that little regional area.
Right.
So you have those guys, and there's some, and it goes to the conversation like I think we're talking. There's some clubs that never wear diamonds, but I see them as your prototypical old school outlaw bikers. And
Right.
they don't
Look at
have to wear.
like the Galloping Goose or Forest Arrows or any of those like old school biker clubs that wore the MF diamond, instead of a
Right.
one
Yeah.
percenter diamond. And if you look at, I don't know much about them where they're at today, but if you look at them back in the 50s and 60s with the Angels and all these other old school clubs, they were every bit as outlaw as those clubs at that time. They were probably every bit as 1% as those clubs at that time, but they didn't wear the diamond.
Yeah. It's like when they said the MF, the Heathens, and everybody, and there's old, small little clubs that, like I said, some people never heard of, but have a big history. The ones that haven't really heard of them were the kind of the newer guys and clubs that don't really know much about the history of 1% clubs and have been around. Or that's where, like to say, the 3-piece, right? There's 1% clubs that have a nice big circle in the back, one patch, but they're still a 1% club. So the 3-piece thing is that, like, you hear that all the time. Oh, you're wearing a 3-piece. You're trying to say you're 1% club. I go, shit. There's 1% clubs with a 1 patch.
Yeah, a couple
So
major ones that don't have a 3-piece for
huge.
sure.
Yeah, huge. So I mean that's everybody goes into stereotyping, and I don't know if they're trying to fit themselves into a persona of what they want to play or who they want to be or not be themselves. Because like I was telling you, there's a lot of non 1%ers in a 1% club.
Definitely.
And then there's guys that are typically the guys I would stereotype as a 1%er, but they're not in a 1% club. There could be in a 2-patch or just in a riding club, and I go, man, that's a badass motherfucker right there too. But
Right.
yeah,
For an example, like some of these clubs in other regions where they're getting permission or however they get it, they're getting a major club is allowing them to wear the 1% diamond. So they're asking permissions to wear it. Does that make them a 1%? Does that make them an outlaw when they had to get someone else's permission or blessing to do it? That's kind of a slippery slope in that point, and then it makes me wonder what that even means at that point.
well, and that's why I totally agree with you, because so many times I hear they said, "Oh, where did someone get their diamond? Did they get permission?" I go, "Well, if they got permission, does that technically mean they were 1%er?" Maybe you be nice and say, "Hey, we're going to be moving in the area," and they said no, and you're like, "Well, I wasn't asking. I'm just letting you know as courtesy we're going to be in the area." Now that's more of a 1%er than somebody probably just, "Hey, yeah, okay, you want to limit me to a certain amount of people? Okay, you want me to do this? Yeah, no problem."
Right.
Then don't why wear the 1%? Let them wear the 1%. If you're going to be doing that, let them wear the 1%. Just get your club, build your club, enjoy your time. Like that, like we talked about. Like technically, I'm fine just wearing a blank vest and just riding around with a group of guys and hang out, follow some type of structure. So everybody's a
Right.
little different.
I think the paradigm shift is like in the early days, like you said, that 1% was pretty much saying, "Hey, I'm an outlaw. I'm outside of the rules." Right. And then I think what it's kind of morphed into is that 1% is those major clubs. And now that argument people say is, "Oh yeah, I'm a 1%. I'm a 1%er. 1%er." I'm thinking, no, you're just essentially saying I'm an outlaw biker. And I don't think those two things go hand in hand. I think you can, like you said, don't ask permission, do your thing, handle your own business, don't call the cops, all those basics that come with being an outlaw biker. but that doesn't add up to being one percenter in my book, in my opinion.
No. And then, like we're talking about, you have guys who, what if, like, we're going to get in the conversation about getting out of a club? Let's say you're out of a 1% club, but are you still considered a one percenter?
Yeah, I
And
would go with no on that one. Like, I was in a one percenter club for almost 15 years, and I don't consider myself a one percenter anymore because I'm no longer in that one percenter motorcycle club. I don't live my life any different. I'm the same guy. My morals and honor and values are the same. But the only thing that made me a one percenter before, in my opinion, is that I was a part of a major 1% motorcycle club.
yeah, I mean, and that's where you see all these guys said, no, they're like, you can be a one percenter because the attitude. And I go, but that has nothing to do with it. To a point, in regards of back in the day, a lot of outlaw bikers didn't have much to live for other than the person to their right or left. They came out of the military. No one really cared for them after Vietnam, too, and joined some motorcycle clubs. And but now you have majority of people are blue collar, white collar, have a lot to lose, have a
Right. And
lot to lose.
this whole living outside the law argument is not realistic in this day and age, man. Pretty much every one percenter I know pays taxes, right? Has insurance. I mean, you're involved in society in some sort of way. You have a job. And then the flip side of that coin is, look at this. Look how many major clubs these days are coming out to the media or making these statements of, oh, you got us all wrong. We're not all criminals. Okay, well then which one is it, right? Are we the 1% that doesn't follow the law, or are we saying that we're actually a part of society and everyone has it wrong and they have us wrong? So I think there's a happy medium there, but it's definitely not as cut and dry as it was, say, in the early days where these guys were riding full time and weren't, we're getting in fights and going spending the weekends in jail, and just kind of living by their own code. You can't necessarily live by that code anymore.
Well, and then like I was telling you earlier about a little oath there, right? About going against politicians and their one-way laws, but then you have these guys arguing back and forth with their brothers about Republicans and Democrats and being hardcore right or left, um, and worried more about other people rather than their own chapters and clubs. It's not like what everybody wants to portray themselves to be.
Right. Well, we got COC, right, and NCOM, and those are all made up of major one percenter clubs, and their sole purpose is to politic and fight against or establish laws in our favor. So,
Right.
I mean, you can't say
That's
that
what
we're
I'm saying. Like,
yeah, exactly. That's what you can't say we're outside of society when you're trying to influence law in one way or another.
Yeah, I think a lot of people try to live with that nostalgia of an outlaw biker, which has kind of disappeared. Same thing as technology. You have these guys that talk shit about the guys with the GoPros or their phones, and they're the same ones with their smartphones nonstop. You can see them in the clubhouse, just sitting there, swiping, swipe, swipe, swipe. Really, on technology, watching us on YouTube, following. They'll talk people recruiting on the internet. They do the same thing. A lot of the 1% clubs are on TikTok doing, TikTok dances.
Right. And these same guys are the ones saying that, hey, it's club business and, these needs to be secret stuff. And then here they are recording, ritual, like people being patched in or different events and posting it on social media. So I think that everything's pretty convoluted these days. And like we said, it's just a very big shift from the days of the guys that were wrenching on their own bikes, hopping on them and, sleeping wherever they could. Versus now where we've all got baggers and get hotel rooms and we're back on.
Oh, these bikes. Yeah. These bikes are ridiculous. Like I have the Road Glide Limited. I'm like, yeah, it's a luxury at this point. The bikes that we ride. I mean, most of the guys on all these big clubs have $30,000-$40,000 bikes.
Right. Yeah. I think that's an expensive point. I mean, a good point is that it's expensive to be, especially in a 1%er club, but in any club, right? With the amount of traveling you're doing and paying dues. And the majority of club members are working class guys. They have jobs. And like I said, we're back to it on Monday when we're doing our run. So to say you were living outside of society while we all go to work on Monday is pretty contradictory.
Yeah. And my thing, I'll tell any viewers that are interested in maybe joining a 1% club, just know the reasons why you're going to want to join in a 1% club or a club like in general. Or we spoke about support clubs. I know some people either hate support clubs or they don't care for them or they like them or love them, either one. There's a place for everybody. Even if you don't join a club, just go to events. A lot of clubs love people going to their events. I mean, just help them, donate to the cause and, just get the rewards, not the risk of being in the club.
And I think that's it. I think a lot of people want to wear the flash or the badge that says 1%er, because they didn't have what it takes, or they know they don't have what it takes to join an existing 1%er club. So they start their own, or they join these internet pop-up clubs, and they know to be taken seriously, they want to say, I'm a 1%er, I'm a 1%er. But to them, it's about image. Or if you really wanted to be a part of that life, you're going to, and you want to be that next level, which is, like I said, that's what I consider the 1%er, that major club, the next level where you're spending the majority of your time with that club. If you don't have that in you and you don't have that time, then don't claim it.
Yeah, and I tell people, don't get it like twisted to yourself. Doesn't mean that you can't hang, but you have responsibilities. You have no time, and whatever's important for you at that point, your family. I mean, that it's a whole different demeanor, mentality of commitment.
Right.
And you don't have what it takes to be in that club. You know, that's a whole different thing, that you don't have it what it takes to be a biker. And the bike, there's so many types of bikers.
Right.
Don't
Exactly.
be yeah. I was like,
And
don't be
it's not even
embarrassed.
saying you don't have what it takes to be in an outlaw club. It's just saying that that 1%er is that next level. The way I look at it is that's that top level club. That's where you're spending most of your time and your energy, and you're devoting your life to this top level club. It's not a weekend club. It's not a riding club. To me, that's the big difference.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just like sports. I like doing everything, comparing things with sports. You have your major league team, you have your triple A team, double A, single A, rookie ball. Then you have your weekend semi-pro, and you got your beer leagues. So, there's leagues for everybody, for the time commitment, for the talent that they have. It goes the same thing with the bikes. I mean, it's a whole different ball game. Even like what we talked about, this like security level mentality, preparedness, devotion for those clubs are a whole different level. Whole
Definitely.
different level.
I think that's a good point. If you're playing in the major leagues and the guy on the farm team's wearing the patch of the major league team, that's not cool, right? It's you're claiming something you're not, and that's the equivalent of these smaller clubs putting on diamonds or claiming to be diamonds, or worse yet, like we were talking before we started airing, is these guys that wear the diamond pendants or rings and they're not in any club.
Yeah, no, and you see that. Like I said, there's people that used to be in them and got out of them, but then I guess it's hard. It was hard for them to let that go, and they still wear some of those, the diamond ring, the chain, like you said, something like that. I mean, as soon as I was out of the club, I just stopped altogether because it was
Right.
I'm not part of the club.
Well, and I think that goes back to the type of men that we are, the man you want to be, right? Like if you think that that little symbol makes you who you are and your identity is tied to that symbol, it's probably hard to let it go. But if you're a man on your own and the patch never made you, you want to work towards making the patch, then you don't really care if you're wearing it or not. And I think that's the big difference. And I think that's why these guys are on eBay buying all these pendants and diamonds and necklaces and rings, because they think it makes them something they're not. People are going to look at it and say, oh, they're a 1%er. But in
No,
reality, if you're not really one, you don't need to flex it.
it's very much just like stolen valor. Someone that buys military camouflage, try to use it for benefits, try to use it for nostalgia, trying to use it for any type of benefit. It's a stolen valor in my head. Someone wearing a diamond who
No, you're
really is
right.
not in a diamond club. It's like stolen valor. They're trying to get benefits and they're trying to get something out of that.
Yeah, and they didn't earn it. Did they? Whether they prospected, whether it didn't prospect, whether they spent a bunch of time in a major club, and all the things that come with it, all the time commitments, the jail time, whatever that you may have gone through with that club, they earned that patch or that to say that they're a 1%er. And if you didn't go through that, then that's exactly it. It's stolen valor. You're
There's
taking
a
credit.
lot of guys, like I said, a lot of guys in those clubs have been through a lot of shit and a lot of time, a lot of sacrifice from their family, from everybody to wear that patch.
Yeah,
And it's so quick for someone to just patch it on and say, "No, no, I'm a 1%er. I just started this club." Or, sometimes, like I say, there's a catch-22 with me. I don't believe in patch policing too much. But at the end of the day, I kind of go, well, and then you have these guys popping up, wearing diamonds, causing issues, making
yeah,
the
it's a hard
other,
one. It's
yeah,
definitely a hard one.
I can go back and forth because trust me, I was like, rah, 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 F you. I'm going to do what I want. And then I go, well, there's people like me that will do what they want and fuck it up for everybody. And then
Yeah.
so
And
it's a fine line.
what about honoring the people that paved the way before you? What about that club, in one state that had to fight for that bottom rocker, and now you're just throwing it on because you're like, oh, I don't ask permission, but you didn't have to go through the wars to wear it, or that diamond or anything else, right? There's typically a club in your area that fought for to be there, that gave you that right to you, so you can pop up. And putting that stuff on without earning it is dishonoring what they went through and the people that have died for that patch. And that's where I think people probably forget or ignore, is that people have literally died for a lot of those patches. So to throw it on just for an image is disrespecting, everyone that's come before you.
Well, I mean, not only that, I think everybody should learn history before what they get themselves involved with. I mean, like you said, some gloves like Galloping Goose. I mean, shit, the Gypsies MC is probably the oldest club. That was before actually the Booze Fighter. There's a big argument about the clubs who started out first, whatnot, but still, there's history involved. Just like you said, if you learn how the history started, you probably appreciate it more and understand what it took to get to that, to that part and that point to wear that. And maybe they'll think twice about throwing on some patch right away, or maybe getting into a club that they know they probably don't belong to or with. Because trust me, there's guys in those clubs that I know that don't belong. Not and we say clubs because there's so many chapters of those
Right.
national clubs. Some might have been patched over, but then they get weeded out fairly quick. So that's all dependent on the club itself. But at the end of the day, I mean, that's part of the question. And obviously, you and I have been going back and forth. What is a one percenter? There's going to be a lot of different comments. I mean, you guys watching this, put in the comment section. What do you guys think is a one percenter in your eyes? Some of you guys are in big 1% clubs. You can say something if you want to say something.
Right.
But at the end, yeah, but I mean, there's never going to be a 100% correct answer to it, because it's subjective. Obviously, with your history, probably my history, anyone's history is going to probably, like what you've been through your past 15 years. For someone that's been only in 1 year, you see something totally different, probably, from what they
Right.
see. I mean, totally different.
I also want to acknowledge that there's some very serious clubs in this country, and some very serious individuals that don't claim to be one percenters or don't wear the diamond. And like, the state I grew up in, Oregon, there's some very real deal clubs that have been there from day one that don't wear the diamond, and they're no less outlaw than any major club. So a lot of it
That's different from me. I don't. When I see a 1% patch, I don't instantly say outlaw biker. Like I said, there's clubs from Ugly Man, Cossacks, all the that don't wear diamonds. That I go, man, and so there's some old clubs that don't wear diamond patches. I go, now those are some true, outlaw bikers from the back old
Yeah.
days. You can be in a big club with a 1%, so I might not see the same view. I can say, no, they're a 1% club. That, like you said.
I think that's what we were saying earlier. I think that's a good difference to point out, is what's an outlaw club or an outlaw biker versus that one percenter. And I think that's where everything starts to get confused.
Yeah. No, I agree. And then the same thing that we talked about being a lone wolf. And then I see the guys wearing the patch of a lone wolf.
Oh man, that's my biggest pet peeve. Hey, wearing a patch that says that you're not wearing a patch, right? Like Lone Wolf No Club, and me and my 6 friends are all wearing this Lone Wolf No Club together.
Yeah,
wow, the fact that you weren't wearing a patch let us know that you weren't in a club. Well,
that's what I'm saying. You're wearing a patch in a way that only MCs wear their patches, and ride like an MC, have structure like an MC, have a sergeant at arms or something. You never know when they, but they're not an MC. And have the patches of it. There's actually a real MC called Lone Wolf MC, which is the funny part. There is a real club that is named that. So it's just, it kind of makes me chuckle too. And like I said, I'm an independent biker now and love it. And love clubs, love history. Overall, I just enjoy all of it. I enjoy the history. I respect the history of every club. I don't care if it's a club that someone doesn't like, there's history there. And there's actually cool history with every club, the way they started. And if the more people can learn about clubs, even if it's a rival club, because there's a lot of new guys in clubs that sometimes I think don't know the deep-rooted history of the other clubs.
For sure.
And they focus, of course, they want to focus on the club that they're in, learn all the history, get quiz, trivia. But it's nice to learn what clubs in the past did to succeed and to fail, so that your club doesn't make the same mistakes, and then your club gets the wisdom from their mistakes from the past. And that's how people do better in the future. You learn how, like big clubs in the West Coast, how they have charters, not chapters, for certain reasons, compared to the East Coast or somebody that has like the charters. I mean, the chapters, and you have the structure and the nationals, regionals. That can, you know,
Right.
it's a whole different ball game. That's a whole different conversation. Not
I
getting
think just
involved with.
recognizing the evolution of motorcycle clubs in general would kind of help that thing too, right? Like you understand the history, but also knowing, like you said, club from being secret organizations where we lived out, off the grid, to being on TikTok and making statements to the media. Pretty big difference, and that's just because with technology and not just technology growing, but the size of clubs, right? Clubs are huge now. I mean, a lot of these clubs that were major clubs back in the day were major for their state or maybe for their region, and now they're national and worldwide. So, things change with the times and they continue to grow. And with that, everything changes. And so things mean different that were before. And, if you don't know your history, then you're going to be falling flat when it comes to that.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, like I said, people ask those questions because obviously there's confusion, or not. They wouldn't be asking what makes a 1%, what's a 1% club. Sometimes I ask myself, what's a writing club? Because I get confused. I see writing clubs and I go, they're acting more like an MC, and they're going to events, MC events, and but
They just didn't get permission to wear an MC.
and just because you want to try to go around the boots, around the COC, and around you think you don't have to get permission, so they just put a RC patch on, and that, I think that's more cowardly
I agree.
Than anything else. I mean, just if you want to be an MC or even a writing club, just go talk to everybody, tell them who you are. I mean, literally, that's what they want to see at the COC. Is like, hey, we never seen you guys. We don't see you at the events. We don't see you at Harley. But now you pop up with this nice patch that you design with some colors that we should probably don't agree with. Then we have to say no to you. Come back, go ride, and do stuff. You should just do that. People watching, if you're thinking about doing making a writing club, that means that you probably have a little group of friends already, or not, you wouldn't be thinking about it. If you do, go to events, go to charity runs, poker runs as a group, slowly let people get to know who you are, that eventually when you guys want to really do a writing club, they seen you around the set for the longest time, that they go, okay, these guys have been around, we see them riding, they ride good. Then you can work whatever they decide. I mean, I think that's the best route to do it.
And I think if you do that, you're likely going to find there's probably a club that's already exists that fits for you. Because I think
It's so much easier.
A lot of these guys start clubs because they don't want to prospect, or they don't want or they don't really know much about it, and that's not for me. I'm not like that. And they make up all these excuses because they don't want to put in the work. And then they create their own clubs, and then it's destined to fail. It's going to have issues. And, it's the same with these pop-up clubs we were talking about, or these clubs from overseas that pop up, and we see these guys around, and most of them are washouts from other clubs, dudes that never made it before, or guys that just didn't have the balls to prospect for a club that came before them, or that's in the area. So in reality, there's probably a club for you that you're going to fit in that already exists.
By far. I mean,
you'll find that out by hanging out.
You're not going to reinvent the wheel. There's nothing new that there's nothing new about throwing patches and riding side by side and going to events and going to the bars at all. Unless you're really, the only time I ever see that can be possible if you're literally in a city of only like one or a few clubs, big clubs, and you don't mesh at all. Maybe, you're just going to be a lone solo rider the whole time, or if you want to try to start there, but that's up to you and the other clubs.
Right. And I think that's a small majority. And I also think, the argument of, well, yeah, but I don't want, I just want me and my boys. Well, then just don't wear a patch. You can still have the structure and the organization. Exactly. You can still have the structure and organization and ride however you want, go to the events and not wear a patch. So, but if you're seeking the patch, join an existing club.
Yeah. And then depends on the patch itself too. I mean, that's the silly part, is like, what? People can't even see your patch much. Depends. Like, I ride a Road Glide Limited. No one can see my patches.
Right.
In general. I mean, no one, it was hard to see. Then if you have your old lady behind you, depends how the rules are with your clubs and stuff with the old ladies behind. No one's going to see anything anyways.
What's the point of wearing one that no one knows who it is anyways? I mean,
well, that's what the thing.
And take that from my perspective, because I came from a major club, so I don't mean that disrespectfully to anyone else, but you get what I'm saying, right? Like, when I decided I was going to be in a club, I wanted to be in a club that no matter what state I went to, people knew what it was on my back, not some made up thing with me and my friends because I just wanted to have a patch.
Yeah, well, trust me. Now, when I first came over here, San Antonio, I never seen so many sport clubs here, and man, they're structured, they're organized, great guys that I met, great charities, fundraisers. It's a whole different thing in San Antonio, and it's like I call it like anywhere you go. I don't care what you think of a club or not. It's like a beauty, or like a beautiful art in my mind. The way things run sometimes in certain cities, there's organization to it to a point, but there is a lot of clubs with names and stuff that I never heard of. And
Right.
anywhere, I mean, I came in, so I was kind of confused about the area a little bit, but that's how some areas are. There's going to be a lot of clubs with different patches and names, but like you said, there's a club for everybody.
Yep.
Anywhere you go, it depends on what you're looking at. If you have time, go for a bigger club. Probably, if you have no time, then don't do anything. Just go ride with your friends.
And from my experience, I've seen a lot of these guys that join the smaller clubs thinking, "Hey, I don't have the time. I don't have what it takes." Within a year or so, they realize they're doing all the same things as the bigger club, and they usually step up. So take your
Yeah.
time too. Don't rush into the patch. Like take your time, hang out, and know what your time commitment levels are before you jump into something.
Well, and then the other one is like we talked about expense. It's not. There's people that say, "Oh, why weren't you in a big 1% club?" Probably they couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
There's some guys that can't afford the dues, the rides, the bikes, because the amount of bike riding you do there. I mean, you need to have a reliable bike.
Yep.
That
Yep.
is,
And mandatory runs, and you're paying for hotels. You're paying for
yeah,
gas. If you're drinking, whatever. I mean, all that stuff adds up.
adds up a lot. So there's some guys that just that's why they're with a support club sometimes, just because hey, they can't do all the stuff that the other clubs do, and some of the support clubs they don't really do these big runs. They'll go to the local events and stuff. They won't do the big runs. They'll do some memorial runs probably, but that's about it.
Yeah, staying in
Uh,
town or even in state, it's a lot cheaper than traveling out of state. So that makes
it's
sense.
it gets so expensive. So that's people have to remember. Not everybody can afford a bike like that, and you're not better than somebody just because you have a nice, more expensive bike. You're not better than somebody because you're in a bigger club. I mean, everybody has their reasons, rhymes, and reasons. At the end of the day, like I said, we all bleed red. If we didn't see the patches in the back, a lot of people get along that don't get along.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
we've had that conversation before. A lot of that's regional, right? I mean, there's guys I grew up with in the punk rock and hardcore scene that we have a ton in common, but because of the area that they started riding in, they joined one club and I joined another. But it's regional too. A lot of us have a lot in common and are a lot alike. We just happen to have joined clubs that are big in our region.
well, awesome. Well, what guys? Remember, you guys watching? Hit like, subscribe to our channels. What's your channel again, Mooch?
Mondays with Mooch.
Mondays with Mooch, and he does a variety of things. He talks about his punk rock days, his cheerleading days. I'm kidding. I don't
Yep.
know. I'm gonna Photoshop you with some pom poms. Just that'll be great.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's not do that. But yeah, so I talk about, just life experiences, man. Sometimes we talk about jujitsu, life on the road, dealing, coming back from training after an injury, basic, just a lot of different stuff that's affected my life. So
Yeah, and guys, you guys watching these topics that we're coming up with is actually that people write comments and question us, and him and I actually just talk to each other about these questions. So we decided, hey, why don't we just record us talking through some of these questions, and that's how this started. So if you guys have questions, doesn't mean that we know anything really much, but there's some experience here that we have, and it's nice to get some questions answered. So then it gets other people thinking, gets the hamsters rolling in people's heads, opens minds, and then other people that have good experience can probably answer in the comment section or give good explanations. Or hey, hit us up if you want to join the show. One time, get recording with us. We can put a third person, not do a live, just do a recording. I don't mind doing that. I don't think you'll mind at all doing
no,
that.
not at all.
I thought it'd be pretty good. We can have a guest appearance of a commenter, of someone that watches our channels or something, rather than another YouTuber, and probably
Right.
get like a different perspective, different view, compared to us, because we talk. Then maybe we might talk to some other content creator. So it's nice to hear people that watch the shows, watch other shows, out there and about, really riding, really in clubs, or not in clubs, thinking about clubs. So hit us up, let us know, hit the like, subscribe. You can subscribe to my channel too, guys. I always forget to plug myself. Wild on Twos. I don't have really much days anymore that I post, but usually I've been posting Mondays lately, sometimes Thursdays. So till next week, much love and respect. Peace.
See you guys.